All right. Welcome, everyone. My name is Casey Wang. I am a co-PI on the Fabric project. Thank you all for joining us today for the 11th installment in our Mastering Fabric Tips and Tricks webinar series, led by Mami Hayashida and Alex Rakatish today. Next slide, please. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items. The webinar will be including a live question and answer session following the presentation. And please note that the chat feature of Zoom has been disabled. If at any point you want to ask a question, please just type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will answer it during the Q&A session. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared with all the registrants after this webinar. Next slide, please. Today, we're joined by our presenters, Mami Hayashida and Alex Rakatish. Mami Hayashida is a research software and infrastructure engineer at the University of Kentucky, where she has worked in ITS research computing infrastructure since 2018. With expertise spanning networking, databases, machine learning, and AI-enabled applications, she contributes to major grant-funded projects, including Fabric and the Digital Restoration Initiative. She also serves as a self-storage administrator and assists researchers with their large dataset storage needs. Mami earned her master's degree in computer science in 2017 after a decade-long career as a music professor. She is passionate about mentoring student researchers, having guided numerous students over the past few years, many of whom have presented successfully at conferences and advanced to graduate school or industry positions. Alex Rakatish is a senior in computer science at the University of Kentucky, working as a research assistant for the Fabric Testbed. For the last several months, Alex has been working with Joshna Kura and Mami Hayashida to create and refine a Q&A tool that uses retrieval augmented generation to help users quickly find reliable answers across Fabric documentation and community resources. Alex's interests include cybersecurity, machine learning, and red teaming. Alex is completing both the university cybersecurity certificate and the AI certificate, with coursework in artificial intelligence, cryptology, computer network security, and machine learning. Working with Fabric has strengthened Alex's technical skills and given him hands-on experience building tools that support researchers and educators in a large distributed testbed environment. And now I will pass it on to Mami to start the presentation.
Great. Hi, I'm Mami Hayashida, and I am just going to go through the outline first. So this webinar is going to have three parts, and the first part is going to be by Alex. He will show you how to use the Fabric Q&A tool. And then I will be coming back to talk more about the tool design, especially the architecture, so that it may look like a black box, but it actually isn't a black box. Well, there is a black box part, but as much as possible, I want to dissect it a little bit so that you can find out exactly what kind of work has gone into that. Then Alex will come back after that to show you how to run large language models inside a Fabric slice, and this is connected in a way that that we are using large language models for this Q&A tool. And after hearing my part, you might start thinking, well, I want to experiment with this a little bit. So since this is a Fabric webinar, we thought it would be a perfect place to share our knowledge on how to get started on running LLMs within a Fabric slice. So Alex, you can take over from here. Go ahead.
Okay, hi. So I'm going to start with a quick demo of the Fabric Q&A tool and talk a little bit about why we built it. Um, so if you've used Fabric for a while, you know the documentation is pretty extensive. There are a lot of forum pages out there, hundreds and hundreds of them, and just documentation that's kind of scattered all over the place. And a lot of times what happens, users are trying to, ask the same question repeatedly, and then it gets messy in the forum and it takes time to hunt down the best answer. So the goal of the tool is to help users get to the right info faster without having to search through everything manually. Okay, so I'll switch over now and show you this live. The good thing is that this is available right on the landing page of the Fabric portal. So on the portal or on the landing page, you will see the tool down here in the bottom right-hand corner. All you have to do is click on it to bring it up. Now, I will note that you have to be a logged in Fabric user in order to use the tool. We made this decision strictly for our services own security to prevent denial of service attacks and things like that. Um, but all you have to do is come down here and just type whatever you want. You might just be looking for something basic. So how do I SSH into my Fabric node? Now, this will take a little bit of time, maybe 10 to 15 seconds. That is something that we're still actively trying to work on. But what the tool is doing here is it's retrieving relevant Fabric documentation and forum posts, and then it's synthesizing them, that information into a single response. And the big benefit here is that it saves you a lot of time digging through multiple tabs and threads of documentation. So we can wait for this to finish up. Okay. So you can see that it gives you good step-by-step instructions um, on how to get in to your Fabric node with SSH. And then at the bottom, you'll see the sources that it gives you. And a lot of times these are just forum posts that could be relevant or other things like that, but you can actually click on them and it will bring you. So here's a forum post just about not being able to SSH into their node. Um, and that is the sources. So you can also get a little bit more specific if you're trying to, find your SSH commands. Maybe you just created your slice and you don't know where your SSH commands are. You can just ask that. Again, this will take maybe 15 seconds. This is going to show you how you can maybe ask a little bit more of a specific question. See, that was actually a lot faster. It just tells you exactly what to do, how to find your commands, and then again, sources down here. A lot of times, another problem that users come into is something's just not working and they don't know how to fix this or what to do about it. And so they end up going through all of these pages of documentation trying to figure out something that seems similar to their problem. But now you can just come in here and say, maybe you can't SSH into your node, it's not working. You can just say, why can't I SSH into my node? I think this is probably one of the more useful parts of this because that does take time when you run into a problem, something's not working, and you can't really figure out why. Um, and see here, it's going to give you a bunch of different problems that could be happening, not step-by-step fixes, but different things to look into, maybe things that could be happening, right? And then it will have sources again. Um, yeah, so I will switch back to the slides. So the tool does still have a few caveats. Um, like I said, it does still take some time depending on the load. And second, right now there's no saved memory, saved history right now. And what I mean by that is each question is handled independently. The tool doesn't remember what you asked previously in the session. This is an intentional design. It keeps the system simpler, more predictable, and safer. It prevents compounding across multiple questions. So yeah, it was just an internal design that we made. Um, instead of thinking of this like a chat conversation, like a chat bot, it's definitely better to think of it as a help desk, right? You ask a question and it will find an documentation and then answer your question. And thirdly, the answer is only as good as what exists in the documentation and forum posts today. There's no magic going on. Um, it- as we update documentation, the tool's performance will continue to get greater, better. Um, but yeah, it's not magic. Okay, I will pass it back to mommy now.
Okay, so now you have seen how it works, and obviously it's a very simple tool where you can ask a question and get an answer back. I want to just show you the kind of behind the curtain part. So Alex, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so since many of you are probably into networks and infrastructure work. I just wanted to share how this is actually happening in terms of the infrastructure setup. So what you see on the very right side is the Grace Hopper node, which is basically it's a GPU node, and this is running on the University of Kentucky's campus, and it has a GH200 GPU chip, and we are running both experiments and also the production Q&A tool there on that node. Now, that server, for security reasons, only has an internal IP address on the main interface. And so we have another VM that is running nginx, and that can take external calls. However, it is a bit more selective than just an open port because, obviously we want to make sure no one else can get to this. So it is selectively receiving REST calls from the Renzi server, front end server, and it's sending it to Grace Hopper, and Grace Hopper sends it back. It's checking all kinds of things, and then eventually it gets back to Renzi. So that's how it's working. Now, right now, though, since we're using an open AI model, that's a large language model, strictly speaking, from the Grace Hopper, there should be like a dotted line up to OpenAI server, but we'll get to that in a second. So can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so here is a typical LLM usage. It is 2026. This is no news to any of you, and I think using LLM is probably part of everyone's life. So, for instance, here I am, and I want to know something, about something, almost anything about anything at this point. So I type it in, and LLM, whether it's OpenAI or Claude or whatever it is, it answers your questions and you get a response. And that's great. In most cases, this suffices. In fact, I think, I've been using it for my work, and I'm sure many of you are too. And so basically what happens is, you've got a pre-trained large language model, and response generation is also called inference. So it is based on what that model has learned. So there was a time when this was being trained, and so LLM contains some kind of knowledge, contains or retains, or whatever, however you want to think of it. Then once your inquiry comes in, it's based on that knowledge, it will give you a response. And this has been the kind of classic generative AI LLM model. However, this cannot answer some things if you start asking very detailed niche area questions. Because first, it may be something that is on a very, small corner of the internet. So it just kind of got lost in this whole heaps and heaps of knowledge. or what you're trying to ask, the topic is too new that it had not existed at the time of training. So in which case you don't get the kind of responses you would expect. And in case of Fabric, I think it's both. It's both. Of course, the word fabric has more to do with sewing than computer networking. So you may get kind of silly answers, and also as fabric keeps expanding its features, none of that is goes into the LLM dynamically, unless there is an agent, but that's a whole different topic. So you tend to get obsolete answers. Next, please. So then to combat this challenge in 2024, especially, this model, what we have right here, became very popular. So what it does is, so let's take our case. So we have our Q&A application. That's the cogwheel right there. And instead of sending it directly to the pre-trained LLM right away, it first take in your question, and then it will consult a database called vector database, where a lot of fabric information, in our case, the documentation pages and also forum pages are being stored, and it will basically grab relevant information to your question. Now, you can think of it kind of like a keyword search, but this is not just a keyword search. This is called a semantic search. So, for instance, the word, so let's say, you want to delete a slice, but, you might say, get rid of a slice, or, erase a slice, or, clear the slice. Same thing, make slice, create. These words, if you're just running a keyword search, you may not get it. However, if you are if you're doing a semantic search, it goes also by the meaning. Therefore, if you have a question, the search is taking that question in and extracting the meaning of it, and hopefully the vector database, from the vector database, it will grab pages that are relevant to your question in terms of meanings, not just keywords. Then what happens is the retrieved documents get appended into your query, and so at that point your query is augmented by extra information, and that gets sent to the LLM. And since LLM is receiving not only your question but also potential answers in that retrieved documents, it will generate a response, in some ways summarize what it is seeing, and give you back the answer. Next slide, please. And this method is called RAG. And again, this was very hot in 2024, so about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I have seen articles like, is RAG dead? I don't think it is dead at all. In fact, a lot of modern applications, even the ones that are incorporating more action-based features, those are called agents, are also incorporating RAG at one point, because when you have a lot of information, it is the best way to retrieve or extract relevant information first, so that you're not dealing with hundreds, thousands, in some cases millions of pages of information. So again, this architecture or this technique is called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. I just wanted to mention that. Okay, you can go ahead. And for those of you who know more about this and want to know the details, currently we are using LangChain to put everything together. And for vector database, we're using Chroma. And for the LLM, we are using GPT-4o Mini by OpenAI. Next, please. Okay, so a few words on some of the decisions we have made, some of the challenges we have encountered, and so on. So when we are building something like this, we have to choose a model. And as I said multiple times, we're currently using GPT-4o Mini, which has proven to be inexpensive at the same time, quite performative. Now, we are also in the process of revisiting some of the free models where you can pull or download the weights and just run it on your computer, or rather probably a server. And for that, there are different families of models. For instance, Llama, that's by Meta, and Mistral, Phi, that's a Microsoft, DeepSeek. And in each of these families, there are different models. Some are smaller, some are larger, and there are pros and cons. Some are reasoning, some are not. I'm not going to get into that, but whenever you are creating or building some kind of an AI application, model does make a difference. But in general, even small models have become more efficient and more performative and at a kind of astronomical speed. So what we have discovered is we do run some experiments once, and then 3 months later we run the same experiments and sometimes get a very different result, as because the field is moving very fast. Next, please. And then this is a RAG specific topic or challenge. So retrieval strategies. I talked about retrieving relevant information from the vector database, but how many documents or how many chunks of information do you want to retrieve? You would think the more the better, because you have better chance of getting hitting the right information that you really need. But LLMs tend to kind of choke with a lot of too much information, and that's because it gets mathematically or computationally more expensive. So it's both time and space. So you don't want to give to, also it tends to kind of get lost in that too. If you give too much information, then your original question kind of gets forgotten. I know it's not a person, so that's kind of how I see it. So there is a sweet spot, and we've been trying, doing this by trial and error, and currently we are retrieving 6 documents. And how relevant are they? Again, this is done by semantic search, but even the semantic search, there are lots of little tweaks, little fine tuning you can do to make it perform this way, that way. Some take longer, some take shorter. And strictly speaking, we are currently retrieving 20 documents and re-ranking them just because sometimes the initial 6 didn't work, and re-ranking takes a little, I guess, looks deeper into each document to make sure it's relevant. But again, that's time. So is it worth it? These are, good questions. How long does it take? Yeah, I mentioned that several times. So there is a time factor too. Next, please. So vector store. So speaking of this vector store, and Alex touched on this a little bit, it is not magic. We can only retrieve something that's in there. And what's in there? Well, we are responsible for that too. And so we are taking documentation and forum posts, but some of them are obsolete, or some of them we were wrong. Or I think a bigger problem is it's missing. There are lots of things that we should have documentation for, but we don't. Or, another big problem actually is is outdated information. There were some announcements from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and such and such features coming, and we all know that that feature has been there for the last 3 years. So if we just grab that document that says it's coming, you might get an answer that it is coming soon, but it is not correct. And this part is still very time consuming because a lot of times we only know when the answer that comes back is wrong. Like, why did it get it wrong? And we go to those linked pages and we realize, oh, that was an announcement from 2019. Therefore, it is wrong. And so there's a lot of human input needed in this work. Next, please. Okay, I'm not expecting anyone to be able to read this, and it continues on, but there is something called prompt engineering, and that is when you ask a question, if only your question goes to the LLM, even with the relevant information, still LLM tends to be lost. Like, what is it? Is the model supposed to do with that? So then there is something called the system prompt that we need to give kind of use it to wrap your question. So to give the LLM a context, what is it doing? And oddly, as odd as it sounds, typically a system prompt begins with some kind of role definition. You're an AI help desk assistant for Fabric Testbed. Your role is to answer questions, blah, 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 right? And actually, this one that you're seeing is a new one that I'm testing right now because our current one is giving us some issues, and I think this one is going to be an improvement. And so hopefully, actually, by the end of maybe this week even or next week, I guess, we can switch to this. But this also tells the model, things that it should not be answering. And actually, if you can go to the next slide, I will talk about that. Safety concerns. So what kind of questions should it not, answer? And so, for instance, in that, later in that prompt, I have, I have an instruction that do not provide assistance with illegal activities, including but not limited to hacking, unauthorized access, DDoS attacks, malware distribution, or any activity that violates law or regulations. I mean, it's pretty obvious, those, should not be answered, but it has to be explicit so that, Q&A tool does not start giving, people information that people shouldn't have, right? And the same thing with like, cryptocurrency mining. We don't want people, going into our tool and say, hey, how do I, mine Bitcoins using Fabric? So if anyone asks that, the Q&A tools will say, I am not, that is, such a question, I cannot help you with that, and I'm not allowed to answer, assist you, with this, such a question. Now, another, topic is, Alex touched on this a little bit, but how do we prevent, denial of service attacks? That is actually one of the reasons why we ask people to sign in so that not anyone or any bot out there can just start typing in all kinds of crazy questions. And one thing I should mention is that we are not logging who asked what question. So even if you wrote, how do I mine Bitcoins? We wouldn't know that you wrote that. I'm not encouraging you to do it, but for privacy reasons, we're unable to do that, and we want to keep it that way. But you do need to be logged in to ask questions. Now you can go to the next slide, and that's my last slide. So future plans, some are immediate, some are much later, but further curation and expansion of input data this is going to be an ongoing effort as we see some information missing or wrong, obsolete, or outdated information in a vector database. We need to manually take them out. And also, further hypertuning of the application, as I said, we are going to update the system prompt, and that kind of thing will continue to happen, I would imagine. There are lots of other little knobs we can turn, so we'll probably be doing that. And we're on the verge of going to open source or free, basically, LLM rather than sending it to OpenAI. And another one is speeding up the RAG pipeline that Alex mentioned. There are some things that we probably can do to speed this up, and so we'll be working on that. And eventually, the last one, agentic AI integration, that's a big topic. Everyone's talking about agents. It's a separate topic, but at the same time, is that going to be integrated into this? Possible? Not sure, but that might be coming. Okay, so I think I'm done with this. So Alex, you can take this back, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to switch gears a little bit and show you how you can run an LLM directly inside your own Fabric slice using a tool called Olama. Um, Now, before I show you this on Fabric, I wanted to take a step back and explain what Olama is on its own. Olama is a tool that lets you run large language models locally on your own machine. And when I say locally, I mean that the model is running directly on your laptop. It's not going through a cloud API or through an external service. Um, and if you have a reasonably strong CPU, like on a modern MacBook or desktop, you can install Llama, pull a small model, and interact with it right away. Um, and Llama is lightweight, but I don't mean that in a way that it's limited. I mean that it's easy to install and use. It handles downloading models, loading them into memory, running the inference for you without needing a full machine learning setup. Um, So the important point here is that anybody can do this, right? You don't need Fabric just to run Olama. The same commands that I'm going to show you would work on your personal machine. Um, but where it gets interesting and where Fabric becomes useful is when your local machine isn't enough for what you want to do. Performance depends heavily on the hardware underneath. A laptop CPU might work fine for a small model that you're trying to run, but if you want a large model and you want fast performance, you're going to benefit from more CPU cores or using a GPU. Um, and with Fabric, you can choose those resources. You can spin up a CPU only node for simplicity, or you could attach a GPU if you want better performance. And this doesn't change how you actually run the model. For this demo for today, just for time's sake and other reasons, I'm going to be using the CPU notebook. It's the easiest to reproduce, but the workflow is the same for the GPU backed nodes. Um, okay, so the general workflow of this is we're going to launch Jupyter Hub from the Fabric portal, um, and then we will find the Artifact Manager notebook and run that so that we can get access to the Artifact Manager UI. We'll find the notebooks we want, download them, and run them to create our node, either CPU or GPU, whichever you need for your purposes. Once we have our node created, we will install a Llama on it and then pull a model and run, and then start interacting with it. Like I said, the goal is to get an LLM inside of your own slice in Fabric. We have, like I said, one notebook for CPU only, and then one notebook that targets A30 and A40 GPUs. With the CPU notebook, we're just attaching a single Ubuntu image. We're not installing any drivers, any setup really, uh, and obviously no GPU. This is much faster creating the slice. It's much faster creating a CPU only slice than with the GPU. It takes about 5 minutes compared to maybe 20 or 30. But with the GPU notebook, it's going to select sites with available GPUs, attach the component to the node, and then it'll go through driver setup and install CUDA, and then it will reboot the machine. Um, And then obviously this is going to enable faster performance, much faster than a CPU only node would. So once you have your nodes created or node, um, you want to find your SSH command. I'll show you where that will be in the notebook, and then SSH into your node. Once in, you can install a llama with a single command that will be in the notebook. And then one that will take up to about 20, 30 minutes, depending on your network and system. Um, but once you have that installed, you can then just run and pull models and interact with them from there, right on your Fabric slice. Okay, so I will switch over to the actual demo of this. So if we start back in the Fabric portal, we'll see Jupyter Hub up here. You just want to launch it. Okay. Once you're in Jupyter Hub, in your home directory, make sure you're in your home directory. You should see Jupyter examples. Once you step in there, come down here, you should find it Artifact Manager Jupyter Notebook. You open that up. Um, this is just going to allow you to connect with the Artifact Manager with the Artifact Manager UI and allow you to download documents straight from it. So we can just restart the kernel and run it. Okay, now you can see we have access to the Artifact Manager UI. Come up here to the search bar and you're going to want to search for NIT11. Down here, you'll see NIT11 Q&A tool tutorial, and the author is Josh Nakura. If you click the download button right here, it'll download it right to your home directory. You should see it right here, NIT11 Q&A tutorial. If you step inside of that, you'll find this directory and then the NIT11 directory, and here are your notebooks. Now, like I said, for this, I'm going to be using the CPU for time's sake, and also because of time, because some of the creating a slice and installing a llama, that can really take time. So I have this set up in 3 different phases, just to kind of speed things up. But this is all workflow from one notebook if you're doing this on your own. So if we start with the CPU notebook, you look at this. The first cell is just getting you connected with Fabric and the FabLib manager. You go ahead and run that. It'll display your FabLib config. You can, go through this, make sure everything looks good. And then the second cell down here is where we actually create our slice. Now, this is simple on the CPU node. There's a lot more that goes into this on the GPU node. But right here, we're just adding a single Ubuntu image and defining our resources and then submitting our slice. So if we go ahead and run this, now, like I said, this is going to take some time, but I want the box to pop up. Below this cell, you'll see the instructions for when we are inside of our node, on how to set up a llama and start running and interacting with models. Um, just give it a second here. Okay, so this is what you'll see once your slice is being created. You'll see your state is configuring. What you are you looking for is your state stable okay and state active for your slice and your node. So what that will look like when this is done after maybe 5-10 minutes, it will look like this. You'll see stable okay for your state, and you'll see a state active for your node. And right next to your node state, you'll see your SSH command. This is what we'll use to actually get into our VM. So if you open your launcher and open a new terminal, you can copy your SSH command here and then paste it in the terminal here. You can just double check that you're in, everything's working good. Now we can start with the installation of the llama. So you'll just want to use that curl command that you'll see in the notebook. These commands are the same for CPU and GPU. Okay, now this is an issue that just came to the light about 3 days ago when I was testing these things. I believe Olama changed the way that they package their files and things like that. So now you need to have zstd installed in order to use this command. Once the Fabric team goes through and makes sure that that's what it is, we will update the documentation on these notebooks. But if you just do a quick sudo apt get update, let that install or go. And then sudo apt get install zstd. Okay, now that we have zstd installed, we can go back to our curl command from before. Now it's running good. Olama is installing. Now, like I said, this takes some time. So I have a separate node with Olama already installed, so I can show you how to interact with Olama. Nothing has changed on the other terminal that I'm about to show you, other than the fact that this curl command has finished and Olama is installed. So we can double check this by saying Olama version. Okay, now we can see that we're good to go. So, excuse me. Now that we have Olama installed, we can pull and run any model we want. There are plenty of models to pull from. For this demo, I will be using Llama 3.2. You can just say Llama run Llama 3.2. There we go. Right away, it's up and running. Now, this is where we can start to interact with it. We can just, prove that it's working. So let's just ask it a simple question. Explain what an LLM is. There we go. We can see it's working well. Now we can try and prove that it has some general knowledge of networking. We can say, explain what a network testbed is. Okay, so we can see that it's got good general knowledge of um, network test beds and it understands that. So let's try and ask it about Fabric now. Let's say, what is the Fabric test bed? See, it gives a confident answer, but it's not exactly, and you'll see as this keeps going, it's not exactly correct and as good as we would like it to be. And so it does know general information about Fabric. Let's say we want to use this to say something like, how do I find my SSH commands on Fabric? See, this is not correct. It thinks it's confident and gives a confident error, but this is just incorrect information. It doesn't actually know what Fabric is because it wasn't trained on Fabric documentation or forum posts. So this kind of shows exactly why we built the Fabric Q&A tool. Instead of relying on a model that happens to know what a model happens to know from training, the Q&A tool retrieves Fabric documentation in forum posts and provides that context at query time. So the model isn't guessing; it's answering based on real curated Fabric knowledge. So all of this was running on a CPU today. On something like a modern MacBook, a strong CPU can be enough for small models, but on Fabric, attaching a GPU dramatically improves inference speed, especially as models get larger. Um, and then there was one other thing I wanted to show you. If you go to Olama's website, you can see the list. If you go to olama.com/llama library. I think we have just the llama.com in the slides. You can find all these different models that you can experiment with and just see what they can do, see how good each one is for your own purposes and what you need it to do. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to show you that. So that is how you can uh, install a llama on a fabric slice using a CPU only node or using GPU and start interacting with models. Uh, okay, I will pass it to Casey.
All right. Well, thank you, Mommy and Alex, for the presentation. So now we'll move on to the question and answer. And I'll invite both Alex and Mommy to show their video and discuss with our attendees. So let's begin with the questions that was submitted during the presentation. So let me see. The first question. Thanks for presenting your work on the Q&A tool. I'm curious, this need is not unique to Fabric. Other systems have gobs of documentation. Are there other tools out there for doing similar types of queries, and how does your tool compare and contrast with the others? Also, are you making your tool available for others to use?
Okay. Do you want me to answer? Alex, I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yes, you can answer.
Okay. Okay, so this is not unique to Fabric. That is absolutely true. Therefore, RAG was kind of on the rage, about a year ago, a year and a half ago, and I cannot speak for, what other organizations or groups have done, but if you look up RAG, there are a lot of tools, both in terms of, the things like GitHub repo, that will let you create your own RAG, but the hard part, the skeleton part is already done. So all you have to do is, perhaps, changing, give it the path of, where your documentations are, or your documents are, and just, say, I want to use this model, and it will tell you exactly how to run it. Also, there are even some, GUI things, I believe, that, where you can build something like this by almost, dragging and dropping. Now, all of that, of course, has to be supported by the infrastructure. And typically the vector database part doesn't take a lot of computation, but if you're thinking you can just run that RAG part on your wimpy laptop, it may not work depending on how much documentation you have. So yes, there are other kind of ready-made tools for this, but at the same time, building this from scratch is really not that difficult. If you go to LangChain and look up, how look through your the tutorial section, one of them is how to build a RAG pipeline, and that's how we started it, and gradually added more things and tweaked. So you can do it that way. And the last part, are we making this tool available for others to use? I'm assuming that use means not use this Q&A tool, but use a similar technique to say, to use in your research group or something. Yes, we're in a we will be releasing some of our code. We're just because security is a serious concern. We're still working on how much to make it private and public, but it will be at least some parts of it will be released. And you're welcome to contact us if you have any specific questions.
Thank you. The second question. As a way to enable AI-assisted coding for configuration and operation of Fabric slices with tools like GitHub Copilot, is it sufficient to download the FabLib API, or is anything more needed?
I could briefly say something, but I might need mommy to explain it a little more. But I would say no, that's not sufficient enough because you your the Phablab needs to be installed in the Python environment where you're working, right? Um, and you also need to have legit Fabric credentials, and Copilot and GitHub, I don't think would be able to see that. I don't know if that's the correct way to explain that, but
So, yeah, I think, so that's a very valid point, what Alex said. You can, if you're going to run your code on your laptop rather than, connecting to that Jupyter Hub that Alex was doing, obviously, you have to have it set up right, and there are keys and tokens and this and that you have to worry about. Now, I haven't yet tried this, but Paul. Well, I heard this from Kamal, so this is like a second, third-hand information, but I think they have tried using Claude Code to write, the Jupyter notebooks or Fabric code with Jupyter examples in the same directory, or maybe they did it, within that directory, and supposedly Paul was very pleasantly surprised by this. And I use Claude Code a lot, and I wouldn't be surprised, to like I haven't tried it. So I think at this point, yes, you can probably do what you're saying, like you can download those examples, and also there are ways to check the documentation. I can't remember off the top of my head. There is a way to do this. The most current API docs, so you can even connect to that, and then yes, you can probably do it. But again, I haven't tried it myself yet, so I can't guarantee you that it will work.
All right. Thank you. The third question, why is the Q&A tool not giving me the code to create a slice?
Alex, do you want to answer that?
yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we wanted this just to be more of a Q&A, like I kind of said, it's not a chat bot, it's more of a help desk. So it's not going to give you all of the notebook, the whole notebook that you would need in order to create this a slice, because you would need to specify all of these resources that you want on them. And that, like I said, there's no history, right? So if you're asking, you could ask about the code for the slice, but then you'd have to talk about resources and stuff like that. So we have been, specifically mommy, not as much me, been working on a code generation side to this. So we had the Q&A, and then we're trying to also add in a code generation tool.
All right. The next question, can I ask which side has a number of GPUs or RAM available using this?
So that's actually related to the first one. In order to do this, it's not enough that we grab documentation. Instead, we have to take some kind of action. So you ask for available resources, and we have to do some. We have, we or the application has to take an action. Action is to look up, how much of it is currently available, and that is a dynamic action, and that is exactly the realm of agents that you are starting to hear more and more about. So um, the Fabric team is definitely working on this, and also the whole code generation is kind of part of it too. If this creating slice, can we take in that and then like have an agent make that call? But Q&A tool again is it's a more passive thing. We it has the information it knows, and it gives you back that. That's it. It's not currently doing, it's not a do thing. It just responds. That's all it does. It's not do, look up things for you, generate something new for you. So that's the next step. Doesn't mean, I think all of this is definitely, coming soon, but not yet.
So just to add on to this question, so perhaps you can ask the Q&A tool to tell you the command to a query for the GPUs and RAMs.
Um, Perhaps, but again, it depends on, as long as, we have that documented somewhere, and if it's in a vector database, yes, Q&A can answer that. And for that matter, Q&A can give you, here's a sample code, as long as we have that documentation. But it cannot run that,
Right.
run a user-specific code for you.
Yeah, you
Yes,
have to
that's the
run it
difference.
yourself, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. One more question. Can users help to add knowledge to this tool?
I think, oh, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Um, okay, I'm sorry, Alex.
You're fine.
I talked to Dr. Griffin about this, just the other day. So I thought maybe, so we're working on it. It's most probably what will happen is we'll probably add some kind of button where user can give us a feedback. As soon as you get an incomplete answer, or you're not getting the kind of answer you want, or you're getting great answer, you can give us feedback. Currently, it's not there yet. So we'll discuss how that will be done, but that's where it's going. But in the meanwhile, if there is an issue, you can go to the forum and open a ticket, or email us, through Fabric and so on.
Right. Next question. Have you looked at using the National Research Platform, NRP's manage LLMs for your service?
No, we haven't. That's a good point. Okay, well, maybe it's something we should look into.
Yeah, looks
Thank
like
you
a
for
good
pointing out.
resource from the
Yes.
community. Yeah. Does the Q&A tool update with new knowledge when documents are updated on Fabric?
Not automatically. Um, that does still take human effort to go there in there and create a new vector database. Um, so yeah, that's something that I think we still need to discuss as to how often we should update our database with new documentation. So
All right. So that, yep. So I think this is the last question that we have received from the audience. So with that, I would like to thank again to our presenters, Mommy and Alex. So now, in addition to our presenters, we'd like to move on to acknowledge behind the scenes additional team members that work together diligently to bring this webinar to production. And use myself, Casey Wang, and then Chelsea Davis, our project manager, have been working on this. Next slide, please. Thank you to the audience for your participation today. In addition to the recording of this webinar, we will also email everyone a list of resources that comes with this presentation. The slide deck will be shared with also a link to the Connect with Us form. We hope that you will reach out to the Fabric team for additional questions and support. Next slide. Our webinar next month will be on February 17 at 3 p.m. Eastern Time again. It will be the Stitching Together Innovation with Fabric Users series. The webinar will be focused towards new users, and we would appreciate it if you could forward this to your colleagues who can benefit from this. As a final reminder, please submit your Fabric matrix if you are an existing Fabric user. And make sure your project description in the portal is up to date because we do use that information for outreach and for promotion of your research, including showing some of that on our website. With that, thanks everyone again and have a wonderful day.